The day of Eleanor's funeral dawned cold and gray, matching the somber mood of everyone gathered in the small church. The sky was overcast, and a light drizzle fell as the mourners, mostly friends from the community and people Nicholas had met over the years, made their way inside. Nicholas, now 15, stood near the front of the church, his heart heavy. Eleanor had been his rock, the one person who had been there for him through every challenge. Now she was gone, and he felt an overwhelming emptiness inside. He had thought that after her successful surgery, they would have more time together, but her body had weakened, and she passed away peacefully in her sleep just 2 weeks later. Roberta stood by his side, her hand gently resting on his shoulder as a source of silent support. Andre was in the second row, keeping a respectful distance. Their relationship had continued to heal slowly, but Nicholas wasn't ready to fully embrace his father yet. For now, it was enough that Andre was there, honoring the memory of the woman who had raised him. Nicholas took a deep breath, trying to steady himself as the service began. He had asked to sing a song for Eleanor, a final tribute to the woman who had meant everything to him. He had always used his voice to connect with her, and now he would use it to say goodbye. As the minister gave a short sermon about Eleanor's life, Nicholas closed his eyes, letting the words wash over him. When it was finally his turn to sing, he stood and made his way to the front of the church. The piano began to play softly in the background, and Nicholas took a deep breath before opening his mouth to sing. The song he chose was one Eleanor had loved, "You Raise Me Up" by Josh Groban. It was a song about strength, about being lifted up by someone you loved, and Nicholas knew it was the perfect way to honor her memory. His voice, rich and filled with emotion, echoed through the church, and the mourners fell silent, captivated by the raw power of his performance. As he sang, he thought of all the times Eleanor had lifted him up, all the times she had been there when no one else was. Every note he sang was filled with his love for her, and by the time he reached the final verse, there wasn't a dry eye in the church. But what happened next left everyone speechless. As Nicholas finished the last note, the church door swung open, and a figure appeared in the doorway. It was a woman dressed in black, with tears streaming down her face. She stood frozen for a moment before slowly making her way down the aisle. The crowd murmured in confusion, unsure of who this woman was. But Nicholas recognized her instantly. It was Roberta's sister Miranda, a woman Nicholas had never met, but who had played a pivotal role in Roberta's life. The whispers grew louder as Miranda approached the front of the church. She knelt by Eleanor's casket, her hands trembling as she placed a single white rose on top. Then she turned to Nicholas, her eyes filled with sorrow. "I'm sorry I didn't come sooner," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I had to be here today. Eleanor, she was more than just your grandmother. She was my godmother. She helped me through some of the darkest times in my life, and I owe her everything." Nicholas stared at her in shock, trying to process the revelation. Eleanor had never mentioned Miranda, but the way she spoke, it was clear that they had shared a deep bond. The room fell silent as Miranda continued. "Eleanor was the one who encouraged me to reach out to Roberta after all these years. She believed in forgiveness and second chances. She told me that no matter how much time had passed, it was never too late to rebuild what was broken." Roberta, standing off to the side, looked as if she had seen a ghost. She hadn't spoken to Miranda in years, ever since a falling out that had driven a wedge between them. Now, as Miranda stood before her, tears in her eyes, the weight of their estrangement hit her full force. Miranda turned to face Roberta, her voice trembling with emotion. "I've missed you, Roberta, and I'm so sorry for everything. I know I've hurt you, but I want to make things right. I want us to be a family again." For a long moment, Roberta stood frozen, her mind racing with memories of their shared past. She had spent so many years carrying the pain of their separation, the anger and resentment that had built up over time. But as she looked into Miranda's eyes, she saw the sincerity, the regret, and the love that had always been there beneath the surface. Slowly, Roberta stepped forward and took Miranda's hand. "I've missed you too," she whispered, her voice breaking, "and I forgive you." The church was still, save for the soft sounds of sobbing as the two sisters embraced for the first time in years. Nicholas watched in awe, his heart swelling with emotion. Eleanor had always believed in second chances, in healing what was broken, and now, even in death, her legacy of love and forgiveness lived on. After the funeral, Nicholas felt a strange sense of peace settle over him. Saying goodbye to Eleanor had been the hardest thing he had ever done, but the weight of his grief was lifted by the love and support of the people around him. Roberta and Miranda had reconnected, and their relationship was slowly healing, just as his relationship with Andre was. As they gathered at Roberta's house after the service, Nicholas sat quietly in the living room, reflecting on everything that had happened. Andre approached him, sitting down beside him on the couch. "You were amazing today," Andre said, his voice soft. "Eleanor would be so proud of you." Nicholas nodded, his eyes downcast. "I just wish she were still here." "I know," Andre replied, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "But she's still with you, Nicholas. In everything you do, in every song you sing, she'll always be a part of you." Nicholas looked up at his father, his heart heavy with emotion. "I'm scared, Dad. I'm scared of moving forward without her." Andre's eyes softened with understanding. "It's okay to be scared, but you don't have to do it alone. You've got me, Roberta, Miranda. We're all here for you." Nicholas nodded, feeling a small sense of comfort in his father's words. He had spent so long feeling alone, carrying the weight of his responsibilities on his own. But now, for the first time in a long time, he realized he wasn't alone anymore. He had a family, a real family, and that made all the difference. As the evening wore on, Nicholas found himself talking with Miranda, learning more about her and her connection to Eleanor. She told him stories of how Eleanor had helped her through some of the darkest times in her life, offering guidance and love when she needed it most. "She was always so wise," Miranda said, smiling through her tears. "She had this way of knowing exactly what you needed to hear, even when you didn't know it yourself. She helped me see that I was worthy of love, that it was never too late to start over." Nicholas listened, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for the woman who had shaped his life in so many ways. Eleanor's love had extended far beyond him, touching the lives of everyone she met. And now, as he moved forward without her, he knew he would carry her lessons with him. With Eleanor's passing, Nicholas's life began to shift in unexpected ways. He continued to sing at Vibrato Lounge, but his heart wasn't in it the way it had been before. He still loved music, but he felt a restlessness inside him, a desire to do something more with his life. One afternoon, while practicing at the lounge, Jack Rivera approached him with a thoughtful expression. "You've got something special, Nicholas," Jack said, "and I think it's time you started thinking about what you want to do with that gift." Nicholas looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" Jack smiled, leaning against the piano. "You've got talent, kid, but you've also got heart, and that's something not everyone has. I think it's time you start thinking bigger. What do you want to do with your music? What do you want to say to the world?" Nicholas thought about it for a moment, feeling the weight of Jack's words. He had always sung for Eleanor to make her proud and to raise money for her surgery. But now that she was gone, he realized that he wanted to do more. He wanted to use his voice to make a difference, to inspire others the way Eleanor had inspired him. "I want to help people," Nicholas said quietly. "I want to make a difference with my music, the way Eleanor did with her life." Jack nodded, his eyes filled with pride. "Then that's exactly what you should do. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." As the weeks passed after Eleanor's funeral, Nicholas found himself slowly returning to a sense of normalcy, But life felt different without her guiding presence. The grief was still there, a constant companion, but it no longer consumed him. Instead, it had softened into something he carried with him, a reminder of the love he had lost, but also the love he had been given. Roberta, true to her word, remained a steadfast presence in Nicholas's life. She had become more than just a mentor. She was like a second mother. After reconnecting with her sister Miranda at the funeral, Roberta had also started the process of healing their fractured relationship. It was a slow, careful process, just as Nicholas's relationship with his father Andre had been, but it was happening, and it filled Roberta with a new sense of purpose and hope. One evening, as Nicholas sat in the backyard of Roberta's house, staring up at the sky, Andre joined him. The two had been talking more, though their conversation still felt tentative, as if they were both trying to figure out how to navigate the complicated terrain of father and son after years of separation. "Penny for your thoughts?" Andre asked, sitting down beside him on the porch steps. Nicholas shrugged, his gaze still fixed on the stars above. "Just thinking about everything that's happened." Andre nodded, understanding. "I know it hasn't been easy, but you've handled everything with more strength than I could have ever imagined." Nicholas glanced over at his father, his expression thoughtful. "I'm trying, but sometimes I feel like, I don't know, like I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do next. I was so focused on saving Eleanor, and now that she's gone, I don't know what my purpose is." Andre was quiet for a moment, thinking carefully before he spoke. "It's okay to not have all the answers right away. Life is like that sometimes. We go through these phases where we think we have everything figured out, and then something happens that changes everything. But that doesn't mean you're lost. It just means you're in the process of figuring out what's next." Nicholas sighed. "I want to keep singing. I want to keep making music. But I want it to mean something." Andre smiled softly, proud of the young man his son was becoming. "It already does. Every time you step on that stage, you're sharing a piece of yourself with the world. Your voice, your emotions, your story, it's all there. And people connect with that. That's how you make a difference." Nicholas was quiet for a moment, absorbing his father's words. "I guess I just feel like I should be doing more." "You will," Andre assured him, "but don't rush it. Take your time. The right opportunities will come, and when they do, you'll know exactly what to do." A few days later, Nicholas received a phone call that would change everything. It was Jack Rivera, the owner of the Vibrato Lounge, where Nicholas had been performing for the past year. "Nicholas, I've got some exciting news for you," Jack said, his voice crackling with enthusiasm over the phone. "A local music producer came to one of your shows last week, and he's interested in talking to you about recording an album." Nicholas's heart skipped a beat. "An album? Are you serious?" "I'm dead serious, kid. This is your chance. He thinks you've got something special, and I agree. I've seen it from the beginning." Nicholas sat down, feeling the weight of the moment sink in. He had dreamed of making music professionally, of using his voice to inspire others, but the idea of actually recording an album felt surreal. "When does he want to meet?" Nicholas asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "As soon as possible," Jack replied. "I'll set up the meeting. This could be the start of something big, Nicholas. You're ready for this." Nicholas hung up the phone, his heart racing. The idea of recording an album felt like a dream come true, but it also filled him with a new sense of responsibility. This wasn't just about singing anymore. It was about sharing his story, his emotions, and his message with the world, and that terrified him as much as it excited him. Later that evening, Nicholas told Roberta and Andre about the phone call, and their faces lit up with pride. "This is incredible, Nicholas," Roberta said, hugging him tightly. "You've worked so hard, and now it's all paying off." Andre, too, was beaming with pride. "I always knew you were going to do something big, son. I'm so proud of you." Nicholas smiled. though the weight of the opportunity still pressed on him. I just hope I can live up to it. You will, Roberta assured him. Just be yourself, Nicholas. That's all you need to do. The following week, Nicholas met with the producer, a man named Victor Wells. Victor was in his early 40s, with a sharp eye for talent and a reputation for working with young artists. He had a no-nonsense attitude but was genuinely excited about Nicholas's potential. I've seen a lot of young singers come through the door, Victor said as they sat in the recording studio. But there's something different about you, Nicholas. Your voice, it's real. It's raw. People connect with it because it's honest. That's what makes a great artist. Nicholas listened carefully, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. He had never been in a professional studio before, and the sleek equipment and soundproof walls felt like a different world compared to the small stage at Vibrato Lounge. I want to help you put together an album, Victor continued. Something that showcases your voice, but more importantly, something that tells your story. This isn't just about making music. It's about making an impact. Nicholas's heart raced at the thought. I want that too, he said quietly. I want to make something that matters. Victor smiled. Then we're on the same page. Over the next few weeks, Nicholas spent hours in the recording studio, working closely with Victor to craft an album that reflected his journey. He poured his heart into every song, drawing from his experiences of loss, love, and hope. Each track was a piece of his story, a way to honor Eleanor, to connect with Andre, and to share his voice with the world. Roberta and Andre came to the studio often, offering support and encouragement as Nicholas navigated the intense process of recording. For the first time in his life, Nicholas felt like he was truly doing what he was meant to do. He wasn't just singing to survive anymore. He was singing to thrive. As the album neared completion, Nicholas found himself thinking more and more about what Eleanor had always wanted for him. She had believed in him, believed that his voice could change the world, and now he was on the verge of fulfilling that dream. But it wasn't just about him anymore. It was about honoring the legacy she had left behind and using his gift to make a difference. The release of his album was set for the following month, and Victor had already begun lining up radio interviews and performances to promote it. The buzz around Nicholas was growing, and soon he would be known not just as the boy from Vibrato Lounge, but as a rising star. But even as his career began to take off, Nicholas remained grounded, thanks to the love and support of his family. Roberta had become like a mother to him, and her relationship with Miranda had continued to heal. Andre, too, was becoming a bigger part of Nicholas's life, slowly earning back the trust that had been broken so many years ago. One evening, as they all gathered for dinner at Roberta's house, Nicholas felt a sense of contentment that he hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in his life, he had a family, a real family. And though they were all still healing, they were healing together. As the conversation flowed around the dinner table, Nicholas looked at the faces of the people he loved and realized that no matter what happened next, he was ready. Ready to face the future, ready to embrace the opportunities that were coming his way, and ready to keep singing for Eleanor, for his father, and most of all, for himself. Because now, more than ever, he knew that his voice mattered. The buzz surrounding Nicholas's upcoming album was palpable. Each day, new opportunities came flooding in. Interviews, radio appearances, even an invitation to perform on a local television show. With each new opportunity, Nicholas's excitement grew, but so did the pressure. The world was starting to take notice of him, and the weight of expectations began to settle heavily on his young shoulders. At first, Nicholas reveled in the attention. Every interview, every performance, felt like another step toward fulfilling his dream. But as the album's release date grew closer, so did the overwhelming feeling that he couldn't let anyone down. The more he thought about it, the more anxious he became. What if people didn't like his music? What if he wasn't as good as everyone thought he was? Victor, his producer, noticed the tension building. During one of their last recording sessions, he pulled Nicholas aside. "You've got to relax, kid," Victor said, his tone firm but kind. "I see the pressure getting to you. Don't let it steal your joy. Remember why you started this in the first place." Nicholas sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know. I just, I don't want to mess this up. There's so much riding on this album. For Eleanor, for my dad, for Roberta. I want to make them proud." Victor placed a hand on Nicholas's shoulder, giving him a reassuring squeeze. "They're already proud of you, Nicholas. This album isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about sharing your story. That's what matters." Nicholas nodded, though the knot of anxiety in his chest didn't fully loosen. He knew Victor was right, but it was hard to shake the feeling that everything he had worked for could come crashing down if he didn't live up to the expectations placed on him. That evening, after returning from the studio, Nicholas sat in his room, staring at the ceiling. He could hear the faint murmur of voices downstairs, Roberta and Andre talking quietly in the living room. But he felt a million miles away. The thought of his album being released to the world, of people listening to his music and judging it, made him feel vulnerable in a way he hadn't anticipated. With a deep breath, Nicholas reached for his guitar, letting his fingers pluck a few soft chords. Music had always been his way of coping, his way of making sense of the world. As he played, the tension in his chest began to ease, the familiar sound of the guitar grounding him. It reminded him of why he had started singing in the first place, because it made him feel connected to something bigger than himself. It wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about the music, about telling his story. And maybe, Nicholas thought, that was enough. The night of Nicholas's album release was both exhilarating and nerve-wracking. The Vibrato Lounge was packed with people, some familiar faces, others strangers who had come to see what all the buzz was about. Nicholas had performed here countless times, but tonight felt different. Tonight, his music wasn't just about saving Eleanor. It was about stepping into a new chapter of his life. Roberta, Andre, and even Miranda were in the audience, their faces glowing with pride. Nicholas could see the hope in their eyes, the belief they had in him, and it gave him the strength to push through the nerves that threatened to overwhelm him. As he stepped onto the stage, the room fell silent, all eyes on him. The soft glow of the stage lights felt warmer than usual, almost comforting, and Nicholas took a deep breath, letting the energy of the room wash over him. This was his moment. He strummed the first chord on his guitar, his voice low and steady as he began to sing. The songs flowed effortlessly, each one telling a piece of his story, his journey of loss, love, and healing. With each note, Nicholas felt more and more connected to the audience, as if they were sharing in his story, feeling every emotion along with him. As he sang the final song, one he had written for Eleanor just days before her surgery, the room seemed to hold its breath. The song was raw and personal, filled with the kind of emotion that only comes from a deep, unshakable love. Nicholas's voice cracked slightly as he sang the last few lines, his heart full of both gratitude and sorrow. When the song ended, there was a moment of silence, and then the room erupted into applause. The noise was deafening, but all Nicholas could hear was the sound of his heart pounding in his chest. He had done it. He had told his story. As Nicholas stepped off the stage, he was immediately enveloped in a hug from Roberta, her eyes glistening with tears. "You were incredible," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I'm so proud of you." Andre, too, stepped forward, his face filled with pride. "You've got a gift, Nicholas. Don't ever forget that." For the first time in a long time, Nicholas felt truly proud of himself. The weight of expectations, the fear of failure, it all seemed to fade away in that moment. He had shared his truth, and that was all that mattered. In the weeks following the album's release, Nicholas's life changed in ways he had never imagined. His album was a hit, gaining attention from local radio stations and even some national outlets. His performances at the Vibrato Lounge were now packed with fans, and his social media following exploded overnight. But with the newfound fame came new challenges. Nicholas found himself constantly in demand. Interviews, photo shoots, meetings with producers. The quiet life he had once known seemed to disappear, replaced by a whirlwind of activity that left him feeling both excited and overwhelmed. Roberta noticed the toll it was taking on him. One afternoon, after yet another interview, she sat down with him in the kitchen, her face filled with concern. "You've been running yourself ragged, Nicholas," she said gently. "I know this is all exciting, but you've got to take care of yourself too." Nicholas sighed, rubbing his eyes. "I know. It's just, everything's happening so fast. I don't want to lose this momentum." Roberta placed a hand on his arm, her voice soft but firm. "You won't lose it, but you've got to pace yourself. You're still young, and you've got a whole career ahead of you. Don't burn out before you even get started." Nicholas nodded, though the pressure of maintaining his newfound success still weighed heavily on him. He didn't want to let anyone down. Not Roberta, not Andre, not the fans who had supported him from the beginning. That evening, as Nicholas prepared for yet another performance, Andre approached him backstage, sensing the tension in his son's demeanor. "You're doing great, Nicholas," Andre said, his voice steady and reassuring. "But don't forget to enjoy it. This is your dream, remember? Don't let the pressure take that away from you." Nicholas smiled, grateful for his father's words. "I know. It's just hard sometimes, you know? I feel like everyone's expecting so much from me." Andre nodded, understanding. "I get it. But remember, you're the one in control. This is your career, your life. You don't have to do it all at once. Take your time, and don't be afraid to say no when you need to." As the night wore on, Nicholas found himself thinking more and more about what Andre and Roberta had said. He didn't have to do everything all at once. He could take his time, enjoy the journey, and trust that his music would continue to speak for itself. The fame, the attention, it was all new and exciting. But Nicholas knew that at the heart of it all, it was still about the music. And as long as he stayed true to that, he would be okay. A few weeks after the album's release, Nicholas received a phone call that would present him with the biggest opportunity of his career so far. A talent scout from a major music label had heard his album and was interested in signing him. Victor called Nicholas to break the news, his voice filled with excitement. "This is huge, Nicholas. They see real potential in you. This could be your big break." Nicholas's heart raced. A major record deal? It was everything he had dreamed of, but it also came with its own set of challenges. He would be thrust into the national spotlight with even more expectations and pressures placed on him. Roberta and Andre were both supportive, though they urged Nicholas to think carefully before making any decisions. "This is a big step, Nicholas," Roberta said. "You've got to make sure it's the right move for you, not just for your career, but for your peace of mind." Nicholas nodded, appreciating her wisdom. He knew she was right. This wasn't just about making music anymore. It was about navigating the business side of the industry, something that could easily overwhelm him if he wasn't careful. That night, Nicholas sat alone in his room, thinking about the future. The opportunity was incredible, but it also came with risks. He didn't want to lose himself in the pursuit of fame. He didn't want to forget why he had started singing in the first place. After a long night of reflection, Nicholas made his decision. He would meet with the label, but he wouldn't rush into anything. He would stay true to himself, his music, and the people who had supported him from the beginning. Because at the end of the day, that was what mattered most. In the next chapters, Nicholas will face the challenge of balancing his personal life with his growing fame, learning the complexities of the music industry while staying true to his values. His relationships with Roberta, Andre, and Miranda will deepen as they continue to navigate the ups and downs of their interconnected lives. And Nicholas will ultimately have to decide how to move forward with his career while staying grounded in the love and support of his family. The following week, Nicholas found himself sitting in a sleek office, staring across the table at a talent scout named Olivia Hayes. She represented one of the biggest record labels in the country, and the contract she had placed in front of him was the kind of opportunity every young musician dreamed of. The room was quiet, except for the soft hum of a coffee machine in the corner. Nicholas's heart raced as he scanned the document, feeling the weight of the decision on his shoulders. "We've been following your career, Nicholas," Olivia said, her voice smooth and professional. "You've got something special, something that's resonating with people. This contract could open doors for you that you've only imagined." Nicholas nodded slowly. He could feel Roberta's steady presence next to him. She had insisted on coming along, offering him a sense of calm amid the whirlwind of decisions. Across from them sat Victor, his producer, who had become like a mentor to Nicholas in recent months. Victor had been instrumental in getting Nicholas to this point, and his excitement about the deal was evident. "I appreciate the offer," Nicholas began, his voice hesitant, "but I want to make sure this is the right move for me. It's all happening so fast, and I don't want to lose myself in it." Olivia smiled, though Nicholas could see the calculation in her eyes. "Of course, we don't want to rush you into anything, but with the buzz around your album, this is the perfect time to strike. Timing is everything in this industry." Victor leaned forward, his voice filled with encouragement. "This could be the start of something big, Nicholas. It's an opportunity to reach more people, to really make an impact with your music." Roberta, ever the voice of reason, spoke up. "I think Nicholas just wants to make sure he has control over his career. Fame and success are important, but they can come at a cost if you're not careful." Olivia's expression softened, sensing the hesitation in the room. "I understand. You'd still have creative control over your music, Nicholas. The label is here to support you, not take away your voice. Think of it as a partnership." Nicholas's mind swirled with possibilities. The idea of reaching a larger audience, of having the resources of a major label behind him, was tempting. But he couldn't ignore the nagging feeling in the pit of his stomach. The fear that signing this contract could lead him down a path he wasn't ready for. After what felt like an eternity, Nicholas took a deep breath and spoke. "I need some time to think about it. This is a big decision, and I don't want to rush into it." Olivia nodded, her smile still in place. "Of course, take your time. We want you to feel confident in your decision." As they left the office, Nicholas felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. The future was wide open, but the pressure to make the right choice weighed heavily on him. Back at home, Nicholas couldn't stop thinking about the contract. He sat at the kitchen table, the document spread out in front of him, like a roadmap to the future. But every time he tried to focus on the details, his mind wandered to Eleanor, Andre, Roberta, and all the people who had supported him along the way. That evening, Roberta sat down with him, her expression soft and understanding. "I know this is a lot to take in," she said gently, "but you don't have to make this decision alone. We're all here for you." Nicholas sighed, rubbing his temples. "I know, but it feels like everything's moving so fast. One minute I was just singing to help Eleanor, and now I'm on the verge of signing a major record deal. What if I'm not ready for this?" Roberta smiled reassuringly. "Nicholas, no one's ever fully ready for these kinds of things, but you've already shown that you have the heart and the talent to handle whatever comes your way. You just have to trust yourself." Nicholas looked at her, feeling a sense of gratitude wash over him. Roberta had become more than just a mentor. She was like family. "I just don't want to lose who I am in all of this," he admitted. "The fame, the pressure, I don't want to forget why I started singing in the first place. Roberta reached across the table and took his hand. You won't. As long as you stay true to yourself and the people who love you, you'll be fine. Just remember that you don't have to say yes to everything. You're in control of your journey. That night, Nicholas lay in bed, staring at the ceiling as he thought about Roberta's words. He knew he had to make a decision soon, but he also knew that he couldn't let fear dictate his choices. If he wanted to pursue his dreams, he had to be willing to take risks. But he also had to make sure those risks aligned with his values. A few days later, Nicholas met up with Andre for lunch at a small cafe near the Vibrato Lounge. Their relationship had been slowly healing, but there were still moments of tension between them, moments where the past weighed too heavily on both their hearts. Nicholas hadn't told Andre about the record deal yet, but he knew it was time to talk to his father about the decision he was facing. As they sat down at a table by the window, Andre looked at Nicholas with a mixture of pride and concern. You've been doing great, Nicholas. I've seen how far you've come, and I'm really proud of you. Nicholas smiled, though his mind was preoccupied with the contract. Thanks, Dad. I've got something I need to talk to you about. Andre raised an eyebrow, sensing the seriousness in Nicholas's tone. What's on your mind? Nicholas took a deep breath. I got offered a record deal with a big label. It's a huge opportunity, but I don't know if I'm ready for it. Andre leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. That's a big decision, son, but I can understand why you're feeling uncertain. Fame and success aren't easy to navigate, especially when you're young. Nicholas nodded, feeling a sense of relief at Andre's understanding. I just don't want to lose myself in all of this. I want to make sure I'm doing it for the right reasons. Andre smiled, his eyes softening with empathy. I know what it's like to be in the spotlight, Nicholas. I made mistakes because I wasn't ready for it. But you've got something I didn't have, a strong support system. You've got Roberta, Eleanor, and me. We'll help you stay grounded. Nicholas looked at his father, the weight of their shared past still present, but lighter now. Do you think I should take the deal? Andre shrugged, his tone gentle. I think you should follow your heart. If this feels like the right step for you, then go for it. But if it doesn't, there's no shame in waiting. You've got time, Nicholas. You don't have to rush into anything. Nicholas sat back, feeling the knot in his chest begin to loosen. For the first time in days, he felt like he could breathe. Thanks, Dad. I just needed to talk it through. Andre smiled, his eyes filled with pride. Whatever you decide, I'll be here to support you. I'm just glad I get to be part of your life again. The next morning, Nicholas made his decision. He called Olivia at the record label and asked for a meeting. When they sat down to discuss the contract again, Nicholas felt a sense of clarity that had been missing before. I appreciate the offer, he began, his voice steady, but I'm going to pass for now. I'm not saying no forever, but I need more time to grow as an artist before I commit to something this big. Olivia was taken aback, but she respected his decision. I understand, Nicholas. You're talented, and we'll be here if you ever change your mind. Just know that this kind of opportunity doesn't come around often. Nicholas nodded, feeling confident in his choice. I know, but I need to do this on my terms. As Nicholas walked out of the office, a sense of relief washed over him. He wasn't turning his back on his dream. He was just taking control of it. He had chosen to take things at his own pace, and that was a victory in itself. That evening, Nicholas sat on the porch of Eleanor's house, watching the sunset as Roberta and Andre joined him. The future was still uncertain, but Nicholas knew he was surrounded by people who loved him, people who would help him navigate whatever came next. Whatever happens, Nicholas said softly, I'm ready. Roberta smiled, her eyes filled with pride. We know you are. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, Nicholas felt a deep sense of peace settle over him. He had found his voice, and now he was ready to write his own story, one filled with love, music, and the promise of new beginnings. Months passed, and Nicholas's decision to turn down the record deal felt more and more like the right one. He focused on his music, working on new material that reflected his journey. Eleanor continued to recover, her health improving with each passing day, and Andre remained a steady presence in Nicholas's life, slowly rebuilding the trust that had been broken for so long. Nicholas's performances at Vibrato Lounge had grown into something more than just a job. They had become a celebration of his story, a way to connect with people and share the emotions that had shaped his life. The audience loved him, and every night he left the stage with a renewed sense of purpose. But the music industry wasn't done with Nicholas yet.